Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. It sounds like the sound is good, screen sharing is good, so we're gonna kick things off. I'd like to say good afternoon to everybody and thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily Rimland. I'm going to be your host today. I am the outgoing convener of this Digital Badges Interest Group, and I'm an information literacy librarian at Penn State. We are very excited to share today's program with you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. A few sort of standard housekeeping things before we get into it. I wanted to briefly introduce our DBIG leadership team that you can see here. So I already introduced myself, but I'm also joined by two colleagues today, Wendy, who's our current convener, and Michael, who's our incoming convener. So please let any of the three of us know if you have any Zoom issues or anything that we can help you with today. Michael will be moderating the chat today. So if you have any questions for our speakers, you can share them in the general chat or you can send them directly to Michael. And we have a few Q&A points that we'll stop at today where you can have those questions answered. We have about a 40-minute presentation today. There'll be a break midway and at the end as well. We have live transcript and closed captions available for the session. So you can select the CC button at the bottom center of your Zoom window if you want to use either of those options. The session is recorded and will be available on the ACRL YouTube channel and our DBIG LibGuide. Next, I just wanted to mention a few things. I wanted to encourage any of you who are here and interested in these topics to join our ALA Connect group. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. Anybody who is an ALA non-member can also join that group for free. And I have the links provided there that I'll put in the chat as well, in case you want to do that, and you'll get our updates about future programs. We also have a LibGuide with more information and recordings for past programs that we've done. You can feel free to check that out. And lastly, I'll just mention that we are looking for an incoming convener soon. And if you're interested in this topic, please let any of the leadership team know or look for our call coming out soon. We would be happy to have you join us. And I think we're a great group to work with. So that's sort of our housekeeping. Next, I'd like to get on with today's program. So I'll briefly introduce our three speakers today, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. Rebecca Cross is Riverside Adult Education Director. She's had a long and varied career, she says, ranging from teaching elementary school in Maine to business classes or business English classes in Mexico with lots of stops along the way. Rebecca treasures the honor of helping adult learners take the next step in their academic career and life goals. She loves the unique work of adult education where students are authors of their academic plans. Megan London is co-chair of the Education Department at Eastern Maine Community College. Megan is co-founder of the EMCC Innovation Hub, which houses the Center for Learning Engineering and the Center for Faculty Excellence, where she serves as co-chair and faculty coach. She leads the EMCC core team for the Bridges Rural Project with Education Design Lab. And Nick Runco currently serves as the Director of Learning Engineering at Eastern Maine Community College and is a member of the Maine Community College System Digital Badges leadership team and apparently a Cracker Jack groundhog artist, which we learned earlier. Let's see it. Excellent work, Nick. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Megan.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to get my screen going here so that we can have some visuals to follow along with as we're talking and for you to see too. We're super excited to be here today. Thanks so much for asking us, Emily and Michael and team. Yeah, I guess we have kind of we're thinking about sharing this information in three parts. So we're going to talk about the origin story a bit of the program and how we developed the curriculum, give you some information on that, and then talk about our initial pilots and sort of where we're headed from here with the curriculum. So as we said, there's a couple of question and answer periods. We'll pause in the middle after the curriculum discussion, just because some folks often asked questions about how we've created the material. So give time for that and let Michael know through chat, and he can help us to relay those questions. So we'll get started. Really, this program began in 2019 with a conversation with the former director of Riverside Adult Education before Rebecca held that position. And he was doing a lot of work with women who are incarcerated in the county jail. And so as we started thinking about digital badging, he brought up the idea that maybe this would be an interesting way to validate some of the learning that was happening for women and the work that he was doing with them. And interestingly enough, shortly after that conversation, the commissioner of the Department of Corrections also started to think this way and approached the college, had a conversation about creating experiences that could be delivered on a secure tablet platform. And again, thinking micro-credentialing, digital badging might be a really great way to validate the learning process for some of those experiences. Our commissioner really believes in education, as you can see here. So it was really important to him that we had some homegrown curricular experiences that lived on that tablet for folks to access in addition to the other material that was available there. So hence, after many other conversations, we found ourselves arriving at the OpportunityReady pathway. Commissioner Liberty really expressed a need or a desire for content to be developed related to life readiness skills, education readiness skills, and work readiness skills. And when we put that all together, we thought that's really all about opportunity. And so that led us to a final macro badge that we are calling OpportunityReady. As people move through the other three experiences, they kind of are preparing themselves for whatever opportunities may present themselves in their future. It was quite a challenge to think about the development of the curriculum. As we said, we had to kind of address all three of those skills. We had to deliver it through a tablet vendor, Edovo, who was an amazing partner in this process, but it was a very limiting platform. We had about 4 options for content delivery, which was PDFs, PowerPoints, short video clips, or 7-minute audio clips. So we were presented again with a significant challenge, and also no copyright material. So although we had a lot of first-year experience course information that we used in our credit-bearing world that was relevant to these kind of things, we were not really able to transfer that over into this work because we needed to have it be more open source, if you will. So we were faced with how do we do this? How do we approach this in a meaningful way and really honor the human connection, since it's going to be a lot of it done without human connection? And how do we authentically assess their completion of this through these tablets beyond just a multiple choice quiz, letting us know that they have read the information? And around the time that we were struggling with this, we heard about the concept of embracing the shake. If you haven't looked at this TED Talk, it's awesome, and I would encourage you to do so. But it's really all about, taking the limitation that you're presented with and embracing it and turning it into the strength of what you're doing, or reframing your perspective around it so that it can work for you instead of against you. So with a deep breath, we kind of jumped in and did that. Would you agree, Nick? Thumbs up, yeah. So how did we approach this design process, given all of these things? We decided it was really important to talk to the folks who were going to be delivering the experience too. So we did a lot of research and empathy interviews. We decided ultimately that the best way to deliver the content and maintain the human connection was to use that 7-minute audio podcast format available for the audio clips for the tablets, and really create what we call a human textbook at this point for the folks who would be listening and learning. We also decided that we would create workbooks for learners to use alongside the experience of the tablets, where they could have space to draw, to doodle, to capture their thought responses to, the things that they were hearing and listening to, and also as a space to reflect on the topics, which ultimately became part of the assessment process. And we also decided that storytelling, especially for the first experience in LifeReady, was a really important part of the process of being authentic in our assessment. And plan development was another way to authentically measure their process of learning and experience as they went through the program. So the curriculum definitely was an iterative process, but what does it look like? In the LifeReady Experience, which was our prototype, it was our first, bucket that we launched, and we learned a lot from that initial launch in terms of designing the other two parts of the pathway. But it consisted and still consists of a series of 25 podcasts, which are 7 minutes each. Some of them are, 1 7-minute clip, and others are 14 minutes and combined together in 2 parts. But the theme that overarches all of these podcasts is experience is everywhere. And the idea that no matter what your experiences are previous to coming to the moment where you access the curriculum, they can all be used in one form or another to help you move forward, whether they are positive or not so positive experiences in the past. And then we decided that we would cover all of these topics that you see here. And the culmination of the process of listening and reflecting on these topics is the creation of a random autobiography. So we have a template, it's a sort of a poem format that they can put together and follow the template, or they can choose to be quite creative in this process. And if writing isn't the best way to express themselves, if painting or woodworking, or we had folks do Lego movies, stop motion Lego movies have been created, paintings have been created, food is another way that people have expressed their autobiography and talked about how food or the dish that they made and presented was really connected to the story of who they are and where they've come from. So, this was super fun for Nick and I to make. We went and interviewed many people, which you'll see in just a moment, the partnerships. The other piece of this, as I said, is the workbook. Each bucket has a workbook associated with it, but it has spaces to draw and capture things. Transcripts of the podcasts are available, which was not part of the initial iteration. It was definitely user feedback from our first pilot that helped us to, fit that in there. It does have reflection questions, associated exercises, and all of the supporting materials for that autobiography process. But yeah, so Nick and I went out in the streets, if you will, and tracked down all these folks who have, expertise or wonderful stories to share around the topics that we had chosen to include. And we enlisted some of our folks at the college who worked in TRIO and student services to also carry out some of those podcasts. But we had some wonderful conversations, so much fun making it. And I think that we have found that people enjoy listening to it. And every podcast is a different voice being interviewed. So it's, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of ways for learners to kind of connect to the people that are in it. And then for Education Ready, we kind of bridged the concept of life readiness skills into education readiness by really taking a more formal look at different topics through self-assessment, tools that relate to multiple intelligences, emotional intelligence, sort of learning styles, adverse childhood experiences, and how that can influence learning processes, and also resilience and how important that is for students. It also introduces college concepts, again, in a podcast format with lots of folks from across the college: financial aid, study skills, the admissions process, student life, all kinds of transfer credit and prior learning assessment. Rebecca is one of the voices in that podcast series with communication about adult ed and what supports adult ed has to offer. And so they're also practicing college level writing skills, and they earn information literacy badge in this process as well. So we're really preparing them to, yay, yeah, Emily, I see your thumbs up. Again, helping folks to think about what does it mean to be engaged in college from like the logistical perspective, but also the skills that I will need to have to be successful as I'm entering that space. It also there's information that helps them to look at career pathways and programs that are available in the college as well as they're thinking about those next steps. In terms of work readiness, again, we're continuing with the theme of both podcasts and self-assessment. So there's a lot of career assessment happening here. There's ways of formally assessing, if they're in a constrained setting and incarcerated, sometimes they do have access to the WOWI, but otherwise there's stuff in their workbook that allows them to go through that assessment process as well, right there on paper. We also do a lot of work with 21st century skills here in this bucket, and they do actually earn 10 extra badges from New World of Work related to 21st century skills. There's a lot of support for interviewing skills, etiquette, that sort of thing. We also, again, have another podcast series that includes 15 local businesses, really, regional. There's some from across the state, but it is more gathered in our catchment area around Bangor and the mid-coast area of Maine. And all of those folks, Nick interviews them talking about why live and work in Maine and what are the opportunities available to them, either from that employer's perspective or from, several of the folks are Chamber of Commerce directors or leaders. And so they're talking about the services and supports that are available there. So again, it just gives perspective. There's a lot of population drain of young people leaving Maine. And so part of it is to think about why is it important and good to stay in Maine? What are the opportunities that you might not see immediately as you're looking around you, as you're getting ready to graduate high school, or you're moving, even out of a space of incarceration? What does that look like for you, and where are supports available for you? And we actually recently started adding more to that podcast bucket and interviewing employers now. Even in the last few months, so much has changed, of course, since COVID. And so thinking about that and adding that to this experience too is really something that we've been thinking about, and also geared toward our rural regions of our catchment area. And then to earn the full OpportunityReady badge, folks essentially do a cumulative reflection of their process. Where were you? Like when you started and producing your autobiography, where are you now, where are you going, what have you learned? And then essentially creating a little 2-minute elevator pitch about themselves that they could possibly use, in a job interview situation, or to post on LinkedIn, or however they might want to use it. And I think one of the quotes that I love that came from, just as we were discussing and thinking about the power of the curriculum, is that it really is based on the learners. That's the literature upon which their experience of the curriculum is built as they get started. And that's sort of where the power comes for the person as they're starting down the path of the curriculum. So I will pause here and ask if there are any questions just related to sort of what is this thing, this OpportunityReady experience.
I have one from Cynthia, and she just asks, what platform did you use for the workbook?
Well, honestly, it's paper. It's just, we just printed it. And Nick, how did you create the visuals and stuff in it? What was the program you used?
It was all Canva, all day, all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do have an electronic version. We use Brightspace for our learning management system. So we do have the workbook reconstructed in Brightspace so that it is accessible electronically. And we do have students using that platform as well now that are sort of outside of the incarcerated population. But otherwise, it's old school, I guess, if you will, straight up paper. And they love it. I mean, it's really been so interesting to see how people have used that space and how they have what they have produced, and just some amazing thought processes revealed. And Nick, go ahead, you can.
We wanted to provide so many opportunities for thinking, and to like keep it open-ended. And we thought blank pages so that they can just draw. They weren't restricted by lines. And we put it in front of folks and they were like, where are the lines? Like I need lines to organize myself. So we were really learning a lot about those designs and how to get the most out of people and give them space, but also some structure to think. So I'll never forget that. That was cool.
Yeah.
I have another question from Dee Dee, and she says, I may have missed this, but was there a designated time to accomplish each readiness section?
Well, so yes and no. I mean, the way we designed each bucket is that it's sort of equivalent to about a 1 credit's worth of work, right? So you could say, based on that 45-hour semester-long experience, all 3 of these buckets and the cumulative reflection could be accomplished. With the delivery of micro-credentials, we take the approach more that it's a self-directed experience. And so, we build the courses in an academic year, and people can have access to the materials. And we've had people complete, LifeReady in as little as 2 weeks. And then we've had people take 6 months to complete that. And same with the other badges. It's in the places where we've tried to impose restrictions on time, we have found it to be less successful for the learners. And so, LifeReady also is, depending on where you're coming from and what your previous experiences have been, it can be quite challenging to think through some of the reflection questions related to the topics that are there. And so they're having space to have a lot of processing time and support around that processing is actually a pretty important thing for LifeReady in particular. So again, we learned all this as we were piloting this with different groups. And so I guess even if a person doesn't finish in that 1 academic year, we allow them to continue forth in the next academic year, right? There's sort of like there's never a time when we say you stop and you stop forever. It's a stop in, stop out, right? So people can even do LifeReady and then they can take a break and they can come back and do Education Ready, or they could do LifeReady and Education Ready and then pause before OpportunityReady. In thinking about it for our credit bearing students, we definitely have them bridging semesters, and it's more of an extended orientation depending on how it's embedded in the different programs that are choosing to kind of test it out with their students. So
I have one more question from Emily. How was the production of the podcast done? Who did the editing, recording, etc.? It sounds like there was a lot to manage.
Nick. Yeah, Nick and I interviewed everybody, and then we did go through both a crash course. We are lucky enough to have the New England School of Communications, who has radio and audio recording and all kinds of equipment and big studios and lovely things, and lots of folks who have skills in editing. And so we did have a crash course from them, kind of a 2-hour tutorial on, right? Was it longer than that, Nick? I feel like, no, it really wasn't. Yeah, so, but it was us. It was pretty much Nick and I that did it all. And we had help from, Matt. Rebecca has actually helped us a bit. We had help from the folks in the college related to all of the content and that sort of thing. But it was driving the bus was, I guess, Nick and I, in terms of getting all of the content together and then the media aspect of it. So, but we learned a lot. And it was so much, like I say, it was so much fun. I mean, it was a lot to manage, but it was also, I think we felt so lucky to have the opportunity to work in this way, and the space to be creative ourselves as once we got over the like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And embrace the shake, as we said, it became sort of a really exciting, creative, professional opportunity that we didn't ever dream that we would be having in our jobs, I guess. So.
Thank you for sharing, Megan. And I have just one more comment from
Okay.
Carmen. She says the rhetoric you use is great to define your concepts, opportunity ready and human textbook. So I'll give it back to you.
Great. Thank you. We tried to be as positive and strength-based as possible when we were thinking about connection and what is the true outcome that we want for people to have from this experience, right? So opportunity is sort of like the forefront. Okay, so pilots. In the middle of creating the curriculum, we launched the first pilot with Mountain View Correctional Facility, which is a medium security facility. It also has a minimum security unit to it as well, and a community unit about 45 minutes away from the campus. So we had 18 participants, range of length of sentence, and most of them in medium security units. We were lucky enough to work with the DOC to identify 2 folks in the facilities who were actually peer ambassadors, and they created paid positions for that. So folks had, on each unit, they had one person who could rally people together to discuss or be available to people. And we went through the whole process of them being identified and interviewed and that sort of thing. So that was really wonderful that we were able to get that peer support going. We also had a 3-person team, Nick, myself, and a student navigator that works on campus and has had extensive experience working with folks in incarcerated situations, and Augie, who was his therapy dog. So Augie was, I think they liked to see Augie more than any of the 3 of us when we went in, but and so we started visiting frequently early on, and then our visits decreased over time. Again, that was about a 16-week experience between our launch and our end of time with them. Some of the things that we learned from them, again, really important pieces of feedback. They wanted the transcripts. They were very clear that that was important. The environment that they were, even though they had headphones and they, when they had the tablets, there's just a lot going on in the background, and it would be really helpful for them to have that follow along, which of course we know just in terms of people's learning process, it's often better to have transcripts for anybody than not. So, I mean, that was a good thing. They also had suggestions for additional topics, that we are still thinking to add in, haven't necessarily gotten there. I mean, you'll see that COVID really interrupted a lot of our work with these pilots. The other thing that was really important that we learned from them is the language that we use, because they didn't want to earn badges. That has a whole connotation associated with it that, we didn't kind of think of. And so we really began to talk more in the language of micro-credential as opposed to digital badge, just because it connected better for the population. But again, I think in general, the concept of a micro-credential is a bit more powerful than just the idea of an individual badge and what that might mean. So, we kind of took that larger than just with this population. We heard good reports of increased morale and connection from folks working in the unit, and their work with us with LifeReady and being those users on the ground really helped us to approach the way that we developed the education and work ready content. So they were really just good team members, honestly, in terms of helping us to figure out what was needed in those other buckets and that what would be meaningful. We did have 10 out of the 18 complete LifeReady. Some were interrupted by transfer or release, some stopped out, but most of the people who stopped, it was more related to transfer or release. We had 2 participants that wrote autobiographies of upwards of 40, 50 pages, just amazing writing. I mean, we were so impressed. We had a guy write a song. Mountain View happens to have a little music studio, which is so cool. So we were able to go in and actually record the song with him, and he did his thing and played drums, and it was great. So we had just a wide variety. With people create collages. This is where the stop motion Lego movie was created. So we just had a wide variety of ways that people sort of chose to express themselves at the end of the LifeReady process. We did have one student who was able to complete his associate's degree. He was one of our peer ambassadors. So between his sort of being leadership role in the program and his what he produced in the program, he was able to receive another scholarship to finish his last remaining class for his associate's degree. So that was very exciting. 4 other participants were given scholarships to University of Maine Augusta, which provides a programming, 4-year programming in many of the facilities across the state of Maine. And we also have, at that point, had over 200 other individuals who just accessed the content on their own and moved through it sort of outside of the facilitated pilot situation. And I'm sure the content is still on the tablets, and I don't have a current figure, but I'm sure that it's been accessed more. The things that we learned, once again, human connection is essential. It's essential for every population. Like if we're educators, if you're an educator, you know that, and you do your best to figure that out. But it really became clear that it was essential to this population and to this experience. Internal and external supports, really important. Structured schedule, if you're going into facilities, obviously really important. The other key piece is that we realized we really needed to develop a facilitator training so that any population who wanted to access it, they had that person internally as opposed to relying on us to instruct for them, right? So if we could spread the knowledge of how to facilitate the curriculum, it would be easier to embed in places that might be really beneficial to access for populations to access the curriculum. So we learned pretty soon after launching it that it could move to other populations. So we did continue our work through an All Learning Counts grant with in partnership with the University of Maine system. So we did another 10-person pilot at the Women's Reentry Center in Southern Maine. Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit about the PACE program and how you use it with that population?
I'd love to. And I'm excited to see about the pilot with Courage Lives. I didn't know about that one. That's amazing. Yeah. Yes, thank you. PACE is a program that we started to develop in the fall of 2019 when Sheriff Morton of Penobscot County asked for help in making a program, a 2-day program for low-risk offenders who would kind of be hand-selected by the district attorney as good matches for this type of offering. And so they're serving their sentence in custody, but on furlough in our program. So they come for a Friday and a Saturday and engage in all kinds of different experiences, testimonies, activities, education, presentations about different community services that might be helpful, even like trauma-informed yoga or art or hula hooping, elevator speeches, a lot of different opportunities. But those group-based activities don't always work for everybody for a variety of different reasons. Like it could just be their personality. type. It could be the group dynamics. It could be that they don't feel comfortable in the pandemic being in a room with that many people. There are lots of different reasons why. And so when I was thinking through how to create this program, I had just also sat at a table with Nick and Megan and heard them speak about this project. And I mean, the energy that they brought to that table was so inspiring. And I thought, I wonder if there's a way to get on board with that cool thing and use it as kind of a backbone of the PACE program, so that there's something of quality for people to engage with, if whatever the mainstream attraction, in the big room, if that's not working, if they could engage in something else. And so I started to get to know Nick and Megan and collaborate more closely, and they were generous and inclusive in helping me with this idea. And so we did face a pretty significant limitation in that we didn't have the Edovo tablets. We didn't have an easy way to deliver those podcasts. And so Nick and I did an Amazon shop, and we found these super high tech MP3 players. And we ordered those. We ordered 25 of those. And he kindly loaded all the podcasts onto these MP3 players and printed the workbooks for us. And they were literally like hot off the press and into my hands and going to the program. I want to say it was right down to the wire. But I didn't feel like I could pull off the program without something like this as a structure to what if something happened and a speaker couldn't come? I could just imagine myself with this group of people, and we can only tap dance so much, and then what are we going to do? So it really empowered me to move forward with this pilot, which has now over the years been pretty successful, and we've served over 150 people who are serving their sentence and never having to set foot in the jail, which is super positive. And I think our participants in the PACE program have engaged with OpportunityReady in kind of 3 different ways. Sometimes somebody just takes the MP3 player and after they laugh at it, because it is kind of a cheesy device, they put in the earbuds and they just listen. And I do believe that there's great value in just doing that. People that are coming to this program are really nervous. They might not all be at that point where they could just sit down with the workbook and dig in and get to it. But the podcasts themselves are a connection. There is that human element, and there's something really calming about storytelling. And so sometimes students just listen, and we won't know in those 2 days what happens with those seeds that are planted, but I do believe that there's value in the listening. But then sometimes they'll listen to a podcast and we'll have a conversation. So in the big room, people will be listening to the speaker or doing that activity, and in the small room, there'll be a listening and then just a conversation. So they don't get to the point of they may have done the doodling, but they're not going to do the formal writing in that short amount of time. But we're still engaging in the curriculum through a conversation around the podcast. And finally, there are students who do the workbook. They might not finish it in the 2-day PACE program, but they do finish it. We've had a couple, we've even submitted a couple through the mail to EMCC for the badges. And something super exciting is that one participant, after serving her sentence and finishing LifeReady, came back to adult education and got education ready portion and continued on. And that would be a goal in the future with PACE. So once we get back into the jail, into the county jail, I could certainly see using LifeReady in small group settings, but we don't have access right now. So that's how we're using it right now in PACE.
Thank you. Yeah, and just quickly, other populations that started to either ask for it as they heard about it, or that we realized, it would be good to have conversations with. Courage Lives is just a organization in our community that works with women who have been in trafficking situations and, you know, just really difficult situations in their past. And so we did some work with them with this material. And then we also had a 17-person pilot with a high school population. There's a Bridge Academy program in Maine, which is working with high school students, again, with a variety of things happening for them. And so this seemed like a good fit, according to the director, who was very interested. And, you know, again, I'll say that all of this work was interrupted by COVID, right? So all of our places where we might have been having in-person contact got interrupted. Thankfully, the Bridge Academy stuff was already in an online space, but just the transition of, you know, everything shutting down and then reopening and that, all of that. So these pilots took quite a lot longer than we had anticipated. And the outcomes were, you know, varied just because of those interruptions. But as we've moved forward, the other places that we are either using them or beginning to use them embedded in our degree program. So for example, in our education programming, in our introductory class, we're doing LifeReady and Education Ready. And then in the next class that they take in the sequence, we're doing Work-Ready. So it's sort of a year-long extended orientation process to the field and helping them really think about what careers are available within the education field. So it's designed such that it could be embedded or woven into any program and customized easily to really any program within the college. And you just get your employers to be specific to you know, that content area. And again, customizing it is so easy now that we know what we're doing. And, you know, having those conversations with advisory boards and recording them and is something that is, I think, going to be really meaningful to us in the future as we think about embedding this across the college more than it currently is. Again, adult education is using it. Rebecca, would you talk about career and college access? And then Nick, maybe you could touch on how the other campuses in our community college system are using it at this point.
Yep, so Riverside Adult Education uses OpportunityReady for our Maine College and Career Access students from time to time. It's not our only way, but it's one of my favorite ways because it's an invitation for students to do something super cool that's directly connected to their area community college. So we've done a Google Classroom, which is similar to Zoom, offering of OpportunityReady for our MCCA students. And we like to invite them to complete it, saying that we will scholarship the cost of these credentials. And they feel really excited to be working in collaboration with the college while they're in adult education still. We also do use it in our program very frequently as an elective for students who are nearing high school completion but need, you know, an elective or two to complete the credit requirements. And it's a really excellent tool for that because we're not a school, so we have our core content, but we don't have a wide array of meaningful elective credits. So this has been super beneficial to our students who need some electives that are meaningful. And then the transcript component, the listening and following along, is really good too for our adult basic education students who need to improve their literacy, but want to dig into, you know, content that's not superficial. So it's great for our low-level literacy students as well.
Am I up, Rebecca?
You are.
Awesome.
You're on.
What's beautiful about this pathway too, and I love being a part of this. So grateful to talk about it. Embedded in this, the origin story of this OpportunityReady pathway is an increased understanding. We were developing our Maine Community College System digital badge initiative. And so this pathway and the development of it and, you know, all the ways in which it was scaling or we were trying to scale really informed our policies and procedures around how badges could be scaled throughout the system. And so within our badge initiative, we have the ability to adopt any college within, we have 7 colleges, any college can adopt or adapt a badge that's developed or a badge pathway. And so we were thinking about the ways in which we could, if this incredible opportunity was developed, how could other colleges use it for populations in their world? In terms of adapting a badge in our system, if you changed less than 25% of the learning outcomes, you could then take it and adapt it to your population. So I have to give a huge shout out to Kristen Stevens. She's a social worker by training at Southern Maine Community College. She's a navigator there. She was working with a program called the Macaulay Residence, which provides housing and supportive services for women who are in recovery. And so she saw a huge need. Word got out, and Rebecca, I think it was you, connecting Kristen to us. Rebecca is the greatest advocate for this program, really. So Rebecca connected Kristen to us, and Kristen's like, I think this could really benefit the women at the Macaulay residence. But then took it and ran. She saw a need for the women in that residence. They are often single mothers, and they're raising children. And so she had the idea of adapting this pathway to include curriculum that ran parallel for the children. So those women could take this curriculum to their children, podcasts, to be able to have conversations about these topics, amongst other additions to this particular curriculum. So absolutely thrilled with that, the ways that they adapted it. And kind of their whole goal is to spread this curriculum to a second generation and to really help have that conversation and to impact that generation, as well as the women in the Macaulay residence. So thrilled to learn more about our ADAPT process within the Maine Community College system, but also the ways in which this curriculum can scale. So I'm really proud of it.
So cool.
Yeah.
I just love that. Love that. So, and then I guess the last way that we have recently implemented it is through our work with the Bridges Rural Project and Education Design Lab. So in this pilot, which we call Destination U, it's all about your plan, learning who you are, your community, your connections. Again, a very small pilot, but it was really focused in that rural region so that the employer panels that we held were people from the region that were connecting to the openings in their region, right? So it was focused very specifically on our higher ed center in our, rural region, and all of it was really about you're in your community, what opportunities exist for you there. We added in financial literacy for this experience. We had some great work. Rebecca's intersects with this program in so many different ways, but Rebecca was a facilitator for that group as well. She actually, well, you should tell the story of Embrace the Shake. Somehow it has come back full circle to Embrace the Shake just a few weeks ago.
I don't know how the circle started. I didn't know that was part of your guiding light, but we were wrapping up the Destination U, and we were thinking about the elevator speech project and expressing ourselves authentically. And so I saw Embrace the Shake, I think back in 2013, and that's just been a message that has influenced my life over the years. And so I showed it in the Destination U class, and we had a fruitful discussion. I mean, it's hard to watch that and not have some really profound feelings and thoughts about it. And also just like, wow. So I hope everybody watches it. But then it was so delightful to see that had been something on the curriculum developers' minds from the beginning. So it's super cool.
Yeah. So again, we're, what we have learned from every single experience is that where it's successful, we have a strong facilitator that is not us. And that just means that, people need to be connected to the people they're connected with. So Rebecca has relationships with the folks that she's working with, and it's successful because they need that relationship, right? And so where we're going from here is identifying those internal facilitators. And so we will issue those badges, we will help customize curriculum, we will do all of those things, but we really need to focus on getting that training up and running. So yay, it's happening March through May of 2022. And we have lots of folks who are going to engage in that. And then thankfully, we will have our Education Design Lab partnership that will support us through those community organizations and through, connection with our student advisory staff and our workforce folks to hopefully serve up to 40 more individuals or beyond. I mean, that's our goal, is to, through multiple adult ed locations, and really try to infuse this in community organizations so that it's out there for people, and it's not something that you necessarily have to come to the college to get. And that's it. That's where we are. So now more questions for 6 minutes.
I don't have any questions at this point, just some comments from Carmen. Thanks for presenting this great work. I also want to share, I agree with Rebecca in that financial literacy adds a very powerful aspect to this. Here's one from Emily. What advice would you give to someone who might be starting a similar program? And along those lines, I want to ask, what was the cost of all this? What seems doesn't seem like it's a lot to have such an impact on a lot of individuals.
Yeah, I think in terms of costs, we didn't have a whole lot of money. We were pretty grassroots about it, and everybody that we interviewed did volunteer their time to be part of the experience. So I think it's, there's the cost of equipment, I guess, to record and to edit, but we just got a couple of really cheap recorders, $200 each, I think. And the sound quality was good enough. We did one on our phone, right? A few on our phones. iPhones are pretty good at that. And then I think we even just used initially the editing software that came with whatever video package was on the Mac computer, right? I mean, it really was pretty grassroots in that regard. And otherwise, like, the capital is in relationships, right? I mean, that's when I look at this and I think about the cost, I think about the number of people that said when they heard what we were doing and we asked if they would be a part of it, that they valued it, right? It's relationship capital that you need to invest, I guess. And in terms of a piece of advice, that's a piece of advice, I think, Emily, is that who are you starting to create the experience for, and make sure you're talking to them. And secondarily, who are the people that you have relationships with or that you need to form relationships with that can provide the stories that you need people to hear based on who you're designing for. Nick, do you have other thoughts? I don't know about that.
I agree 1000%. And the human, that just kept coming up so many ways. When we got stuck, thinking about how could we either ask questions to humans, like Megan mentioned, at Hudson University, their program, or involve more humans in the process. Rebecca Cross here. I mean, as far as how we scale it or how we, keep it going, I think whenever we got stuck, whether it was a curriculum choice, we chose to use human voices instead of just blocks of text. So I think that would be a huge piece, is when in doubt, bring in the human aspect of it, for sure.
And Carmen would like you to mention more about the peer badge ambassadors, as she's trying to relate to wanting to develop an undergraduate IL program.
Yeah, I think, again, even there, it goes back to the human connection and making sure that the people who are going through the experience have either people who are going through it at the same time who they see as their equals, right? Or people who have been through the experience already, so that they can, again, who are seen as equals in that process, so that they have the support to work through whatever questions or frustrations or feelings that come up as they're working with these things. I mean, I think we all always, when we were working, tried to not be seen in any way as authority figures, but there is that relationship of an instructor or facilitator to a student that kind of always has that dynamic to it, right? Whether you try really hard to smooth it out and not have it be that way and have it be more of an equal relationship or not. So the concept of peer ambassador is that it is a convener of conversation. It is a non-threatening and familiar person, again, who's in their community, who they know. And the role, you know, what we train them on is how to listen, how to ask good questions as you're talking with people, how not to be judgmental and not make conversations about did you complete it, more like how are you moving through it conversations, you know what I mean? So I don't know if that answers your question fully, or if Nick and Rebecca have other thoughts to say about peer ambassadors, but I think that that's where we came from in putting them in place.
One thing I would throw out there too that we got feedback from is kind of that beautiful balance between structure and your personal time to digest this. You know, this was developed for folks to go back to their own space and listen to, in the freedom to do that. But also we heard a need, like we want a space to talk about this, or a peer ambassador to say, hey, we're going to meet on Tuesday. And they kind of needing that little responsibility to the group to kind of guide you and nudge you to get your stuff done. You know, some of that beautiful balance between structure and freedom. And the ambassadors provided that.
Great. Well, I just have one last thing to share. Our time is up for today, unfortunately, but this has been a great introduction to your program. I hope I speak for others when I say I feel inspired, and you know, hope that they can take some inspiration and contact you if needed, if they have questions. So I do want to thank everybody who attended and participated, especially our presenters, though, all three of them. Please look for a notification about the recording, check our LibGuide. You can connect with us in ALA Connect. I put them in the chat. And until next time, likely our spring program, which, as we know, will be 6 weeks early. We hope you all have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.